Hello and welcome to The Window, talkSPORT's daily YouTube show, keeping you up to date with everything going on in the transfer window, the rumours, the done deals and everything in between. Now, I've got loads to get stuck into today. I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Furniss from Opta, who's going to give us the numbers and the stats and the figures behind some of the biggest transfer stories of the day. Hi, Matt.
Hello, nice to see you.
You too. So let's start with a striker who's in the news today. Eintracht Frankfurt striker Ekitike. We know Liverpool were interested earlier this window, but a link with Newcastle seems to be gathering a lot of momentum today. So tell us why so many clubs are interested in him, and if Newcastle do get this over the line, what sort of striker he'll be for them.
He's a real all-rounder. He's one of those players that will score you goals, create chances for teammates as well. I think last season in the Bundesliga, obviously it was his best season at club level yet. Still a young player, which is important as well. And for Newcastle fans, I think there are fears that maybe Alexander Isak could move on to another club. He is one of those players that will work really well with Isak, but also can play alongside him. Very similar style, very tall, 6'3", very slight as well though. So he's not one of those players that will be fantastic in the air, like stupidly strong, like some players of that height. But he's a really nimble player, can play as the main striker, can play just off the striker to the side as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he does at Newcastle. Now, in the Bundesliga last season, at Eintracht, that was his first permanent season at the Bundesliga club after a spell on loan from PSG. And his numbers were exceptional last year. You've got 22 goals and 12 assists in all competitions for Eintracht. That was the most at the club. And across all competitions, excluding penalties, only Michael Olise and Harry Kane had more in goal involvements than he did. So, yeah, I mean, he adapted well to losing teammate Omar Marmoush in January to Man City. And Eintracht really relied heavily on him on that second half of the season, where he had 15 goal involvements in 22 games after Marmoush left.
Interesting. So, yeah, you said they can play together potentially, Isak and Ekitike. Yeah, Newcastle fans will probably be thinking, if we're going to spend £65 million on someone, you want him to be a starter. He's obviously someone who's fancied by lots of clubs. So how would that work? At the moment they've been playing one up front, and Gordon on one side, and with Elanga coming in, potentially Elanga on the other. Do you see them changing that formation to more of a two up top, or would he play out wide?
I think, he can do both. I think the main thing is for Newcastle is squad depth, and it's what we've seen quite a lot with the top clubs this year. Arsenal and Chelsea are signing quite a few attacking players as well, knowing full well that they want to go across the domestic competitions, go far on those. But you've got those 8 matches in the league phase of the Champions League as well that Newcastle will have to play next season. So that's quite a lot of games for them. As I said before, Ekitike can play as that main striker, but play also on the left, probably the right as well. But the main thing is squad depth, and we've seen that quite a lot this season with the transfer window, with Chelsea and Arsenal signing quite a few attacking players, or at least being linked to the signing of quite a few attacking players. When you've got the domestic cup competitions that Newcastle obviously want to go as far as they did last year and win a League Cup or an FA Cup. But they've got those 8 additional games in the Champions League phase, and who knows, they might be even more in the knockout stages. So that squad depth will be really important to Eddie Howe and his side. And that's one reason why Elanga came in to help with Josh Murphy on that right-hand side as well. What we'll see with Ekitike is he's not just a striker. His chance creation numbers were really good last season as well. I think only 6 players in the Bundesliga created more open play chances than him. XG assisted was the 4th most from open play passes. Great ball carrier. Again, quite a few of these attacking players that clubs are signing now are. He had the highest tally of ball carries ending in a shot last season in the Bundesliga with 44. So that's something that we can expect to see, that him attacking from deep. Very similar to Elanga in that he had great chance creation numbers from ball carries as well. So this will be quite an interesting thing for Newcastle next season, who were one of the sides last season who played furthest up the pitch, but they're now signing players that are very good dribblers with the ball, who can carry the ball long distances upfield. So maybe we might see an adaptation of Eddie Howe's tactics at Newcastle next season as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that's what is in Eddie Howe's thinking when he's bringing players like Ekitike, we expect? Or is it perhaps giving his team a plan B if things aren't going so well the way they play?
I think that's it. I think that being able to adapt to different opponents is really important in the Premier League. We've seen that with the top clubs many times. And that's not saying Newcastle weren't able to do that last season, but having a player as good as Ekitike in the squad, as well as what they had last season, is only going to strengthen them. The one downside, and I'll have to be negative at some point about a player like Ekitike, is that his XG underperformance last season was the highest in the Bundesliga. So whilst he had the second highest XG behind Guirassy at Borussia Dortmund, he scored 14 non-penalty goals from an XG of 19.2. So his underperformance of 5.2 was the highest. Now, the important thing to factor in here is that's not really a judgment on his finishing quality. I think that he's a young player, and you want a player like that to be able to get in positions to score, and eventually you hope that will come right. And what is interesting is that you look at Alexander Isak when he was a similar age at Real Sociedad, his underperformance was similar to what we are seeing from Ekitike, and we now know Isak to be one of the best strikers in European football. So I do think they are signing a player that has a lot of potential. His ceiling is high, and he might not be at the level now that we will see him at in 3 or 4 years. He could go even higher. So I do think this is a great signing for Newcastle if they can get it over the line.
Yeah, that's interesting what you say about him underperforming his XG. I think I'm right in saying that's sort of the opposite to Brian and Burma at Brentford, isn't it? He was really overperforming his XG, which meant his finishing was excellent, but he perhaps wasn't creating as many chances as the number of goals he was scoring would suggest.
Yeah, I think what you would see over time is that levelling out, and it's probably, it's not lucky. I'm not going to say it's lucky, but you only really see the elite finishers in the game, your Harry Kanes, Lionel Messi, Robert Lewandowski, overperform that XG over long, sustained periods because they are elite finishers, and they've proven that over time. Now, we don't know if that is going to be the case with someone like Mbeumo at United if he joins them. That might be the case. Who knows? He might be one of those players, but it's too early to really tell with that.
Okay, interesting. Talking about good finishers, let's move on to Gyökeres. Arsenal have seemingly got this one over the line. Not quite done yet. They're just sorting out add-ons with Sporting, we understand. You've been having a look around the stats of players' first season in the Premier League, specifically strikers, and how they get on in that first season.
Yeah, last week on the window, I talked about how great his stats were. We all know how great his stats have been in Portugal. There is still some doubt whether that could transfer to the Premier League. But similar questions were asked of Erling Haaland when he joined from Borussia Dortmund and joined from Man City in 2022-23. Now, Haaland is actually one of the only 11 players in Premier League history who have scored 20 or more goals in their first season in the Premier League. So it's actually quite difficult to hit the ground running as a Premier League player. And I think the expectation of a lot of Arsenal fans might be that, we found the goal scorer. We're going to get this guy who's going to get the goals we need, 20 or more goals to win the Premier League title for us. Now, Haaland, as everyone remember, broke the Premier League record, scoring 36 times in his first season. That beat Andy Cole's record at Newcastle in 93-94. Now, I mean, of those 11 players that have scored 20 or more goals in their first Premier League season, only 7 of those have been in the 38-game season. Obviously, it's a lot easier to score 20 or more goals when you have 4 games more. We saw Teddy Sheringham do that, Jurgen Klinsmann do that, Andy Cole do that. Now, it's also quite difficult for a player to come to England from another league and do well. And now I know Gyökeres has played in England, he played in the Championship, but that's not quite the same level, is it? Otherwise, you'd be seeing players coming up from the Championship quite often as scoring 20 or more goals. So we've seen players like Fernando Torres do it. We've seen Ruud van Nistelrooy do it at Man United. We've seen Sergio Aguero do it at Man City. So it is possible, but I don't think that Gyökeres is going to replicate that goal record that he's had in Portugal in the Premier League. Now, that might not be needed. 20 goals would be exceptional for a player like Gyökeres in the Premier League next season. But it's been also quite rare at Arsenal as well. The last player to score 20 or more goals in the league in their first season at the club was Ian Wright in 91-92 when he scored 24. He scored 24 that season as well. Now, only 6 players have scored 20 or more goals in their first league season across history in the top flight at Arsenal. So it is a rare occurrence. Arsenal fans will be hoping Gyökeres can replicate that, but there are maybe red flags or warning signs that might not happen in his first season.
Yeah, and you were talking the other day in the previous episode of The Window about the Portuguese league, and actually you've got your stats and your metrics which show it's not as strong as the Championship and even the Belgian league. So would that be another worry? Not trying to dampen Arsenal fans' expectations of Gyökeres, but that'd be another worry for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think that the league quality, I think we talked last week about some of the hat-tricks he scored, for example, in Portugal, against teams that in our Opta Power rankings are at the same level as the mid-table lower end of League One in England. So there has to be some context put to what's behind those goals. But at the same time, you can only score against what's in front of you, can't you? And we don't know if Gyökeres can reach those levels. We know that he scored goals in the Champions League, including that hat-trick against Man City. But again, 2 of those from the penalty spot. And again, I'm not trying to dampen the excitement of Arsenal fans about this potential signing. But there are factors that to be wary of. Now, Mikel Arteta is a great coach. He will improve anyone that joins that club. And I feel that Gyökeres, his trajectory is obviously going up all the time. And there's no reason why that can't go up even further. But these are just, stats and factors to remember. Now, one positive fact, a nice little statistical nugget from history, is that the last Arsenal player to have their debut against Man United, as Gyökeres probably will do in the Premier League, and score was also Swedish, Freddie Ljungberg, back in 1998. So you never know, he might replicate that.
Oh, there you go.
I do realise I am reaching there. I'll put that back.
Well, I suppose another good fact is for people who watched that hat-trick against Man City, the one that wasn't a penalty was an excellent finish. So sometimes the eye test says it all. You go, right, if you can finish like that, we're onto something here. So, let's see how he goes. Now, a deal that Arsenal have got over the line, it's been confirmed this morning. Christian Mosca, the Valencia centre-back, deal confirmed, medical going to happen within the next few days. And that's around 15 million euros, so really not much. And you're impressed with this young centre-back, aren't you?
What a bargain. What a bargain. 15 million. Someone who is one of the best young defenders in European football at the moment. A really exciting signing for Arsenal fans to get excited about. And it's one of those ones where Mikel Arteta loves availability. Players that are reliable, can be in the squad all the time. Mosca is that. He has played so many games over the last 2 seasons, starting 70 of their 76 La Liga games. That's more than any other player at the club. Now, in fact, Mosca is the leading under-21 player across the top 5 European leagues for starts, games played and minutes played across the last 2 seasons. So he is a player that will be available to Mikel Arteta all season. The question is, he's not going to be able to dislodge Gabriel or Saliba. Is he another backup alongside Kivior? And will he be willing to accept that? Having played so often at Valencia over the last 2 seasons, how can you keep him happy? Yet again, it's another example of these big clubs building squads that can battle on multiple fronts. Mosca is one of the best backup defenders you can have in the Premier League. I'm really excited about this one, and I'm not even an Arsenal fan. So, it's going to be a good one to see. Now, there is another fact that will really excite Arsenal fans, in that he is the best 1v1 defender in La Liga against dribblers. So last season in La Liga, of players to face at least 50 opposition dribbles, he had the best true tackle percentage of any player. That was 76.7%. Now, true tackles, just to explain this, a few years ago, you might have seen this stat going around that, no one dribbles past Virgil van Dijk. No one's dribbled past him for a long time. Now, that wasn't actually factoring in many occasions where Virgil van Dijk was like, no, not today, I'm just going to foul you. So those players couldn't get past him because he fouled them. Now, we look at true tackles where we consider those as well. So you look at the times that players have dribbled past the defender and the times that actually they've stopped them with a foul. And true tackles is actually a fair tackle where they've won the ball, either putting out of play, but actually winning possession in that instance and stopping that opposition sequence. Mosca is the best 1v1 defender, or he was the best last season in La Liga. So this is a player that is fantastic in those battles and duels. And Arsenal, this is going to be a great signing for you, I think.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and you say he will be a backup to Saliba and Gabriel. Obviously, we know that they've been excellent for Arsenal. Do you think there's a way that he can, I suppose, give them the competition and potentially force a way into that side ahead of Gabriel or Saliba?
Yeah, I think last season, obviously towards the end, we saw Gabriel have his injury problems, and Kivior did really well as a deputy. But who's to say that Saliba or Gabriel wouldn't spend time out injured this season? And that's also why they're signing a backup in Madueke for Saka, because he missed nearly half the season last year, and that really damaged their hopes of winning the Premier League titles. So you need a lot of strength in depth, and there's nothing to say that after, if one of those two were to get injured and Mosca came in, performed really well, he couldn't dislodge one of them. I think the one doubt about Mosca is maybe some of his passing qualities. He's still a very young player, so it's still quite hard to know that at the moment. But he ranked 11th last season in La Liga for total passes attempted. And of course, it's not to be expected because he's a centre-back. We're not one of those created a chance for a teammate. And only 3.8% of those passes were deemed progressive, meaning that they advance up the pitch. Now, of the other top 20 players for passes attempted last season, only 3 had a lower proportion, more progressive on the pitch. So that's something that maybe he doesn't like to take risks with his passes, and something Arteta will have to bring out of him if he's to really kind of help advance play or build play from the back for Arsenal next season.
Well, let's talk about Jean-Philippe Mateta, the Crystal Palace striker. There's been interest from Liverpool. We know earlier in the season Manchester United were interested in him. So where do you stand on this? Would he be good enough to be Liverpool's main striker, or do you see him as more of a backup if he were to go to Anfield?
I think, well, first of all, if he's going to have a lot of success at Liverpool, maybe he needs to take Oliver Glasner with him, because under Glasner, his form has been exceptional. Before Glasner, not so much. It seems that Glasner has actually unlocked the potential in Mateta's game. Now, Mateta is a really interesting one, but obviously a very physical striker, tall, great with both feet, good in the air, real all-rounder, but also presses really well. Like Palace are one of the most extreme pressers in the middle of the pitch last season, obviously exploiting a lot of teams' high lines against them with the pace of Ismail Assar, Eze as well. So I think it would be an interesting one to see Mateta at a big club. I feel like this isn't downplaying his qualities, but he probably was more of a backup striker. Coming into a season as reigning Premier League champions, you probably wouldn't want a player like Mateta as your main option as striker. But that's not poo-pooing his qualities and also the stats that he's had at Palace since Glasner came in. Now, since Glasner's first game on the 24th of February last year, Mateta has scored 27 goals in 50 Premier League appearances. Only Isak, Haaland and Salah have scored more in that period. And one of the main reasons for that is how clinical he is in front of goal. He had the best conversion rate of shots last season in the Premier League since Glasner came in. Of the 91 players to have scored 5 or more goals, he converted 27.8% of his shots, which is a phenomenal success rate. But also from non-penalty situations, that success rate in front of goal was just as strong. 25.5% was his conversion rate from non-penalty shots. Now, one thing that if they have an idea of placing Darwin Núñez with Mateta is shot volume. Núñez is one of the most prolific shooters you will find in the Premier League, averaging over 4 per 90 minutes. Now, Mateta's average is actually half that at 2.1 per 90. He's not a prolific shooter. And I don't think that really depended on Palace's style of play either, because Eze is high up in the rankings there at 3.6 per 90. So they do create chances, and Mateta is one of those players that maybe likes to bide his time, look at other options, play the pass rather than shooting, whereas Núñez is all about just get the shot away. If you don't shoot, you don't score. Obviously, last season didn't really work too well, that tactic for Núñez. It sounds like maybe he is off to Napoli. There's many links there as well. So Mateta could be a player that would replace Núñez if they bring in another number 9 as well, and that could be someone like Isak.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So he doesn't take many shots, but when he does, they tend to go in. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all down to maybe incredible shot selection as well. If he's a player that thinks that I'm not going to score from here, there's no point in shooting from here. I'll wait until we I don't know, progress the ball a little bit more into the box, and then I'll have a go. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, it's going to be a really interesting one to see if Palace can keep hold of him. Man United are obviously in the market for a striker as well. feels like that might be a move that would work a little bit more for Mateta because he'd play more. And yeah, that's something that every player wants to do. They don't want to be a backup to anyone. So yeah, maybe Mateta will move on this summer.
Yeah, let's see what happens with that one. And right, the Morgan Gibbs-White saga. It looked at the back end of last week like Spurs were going to meet the release clause, which we heard was 60 million. And then now, as of today, Forest have officially launched legal proceedings against Spurs for approaching Morgan Gibbs-White when they weren't allowed to. It looks like this move is probably still going to get done, but it's just hit a couple of stumbling blocks. Now, the eye test with Morgan Gibbs-White last season, he was great to watch, wasn't he? What were the stats saying, and why is he worth this money that Spurs are willing to pay?
Well, he's been integral to Forest, not only last season's success of getting into European competition, but also survival in the previous seasons. 3 consecutive seasons as their leading creative player. Last season, he was directly involved in more than a quarter of Forest goals in the league, 15 of 58, with 7 goals and 8 assists in 34 league games last season as well. And this is for a club that didn't score loads of goals. As we talked about with Elanga on the show last week, don't spend a lot of time in the attacking third of the pitch. So Gibbs-White is one of those players, very versatile. And it'll be really interesting to see how he fits in to Tottenham's team should they get him over the line. Now, Frank really likes his number 10 to be a heavy presser of opposition players as well. Will you get that from Gibbs-White? We don't really know yet. I think he'll be vying for that number 10 spot with James Maddison, Dejan Kulusevski as well. So it's another team, a lot of strength in depth in those attacking areas as well. Last season, Mikkel Damsgaard was that number 10 player under Frank at Brentford, and he was the leading player for pressures in the Premier League last season. So it's something that Frank will come to expect of that player in that role. I think Gibbs-White was 16th overall last season in Premier League, so no slouch in terms of pressing numbers, but it's something that they will definitely look to get from that player that plays in that role. Now, Frank's Tottenham should be very different to Frank's Brentford. Brentford were the team that were in a low block more than any other last season. They're not a high possession team. Frank has been a high possession team when he was Brentford manager in the Championship, when he was at Bromby before, so he can play that way. Now, Gibbs-White is very comfortable with the ball at his feet. As we said before, great creator of chances as well, but equally, horses for courses. If Spurs play teams like Man City, Arsenal, etc., they might want to defend a lot more, and Gibbs-White is equally impressive in those situations. So I think he's a really good player for Spurs. If they can get him over the line, he'd be great in that side. Doesn't just improve their squad, he would be improving their starting 11 as well. So I think that's one that Tottenham fans also should be very excited about.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's finish with a huge story in women's football. Olivia Smith, the Liverpool striker who's going to move to Arsenal. They've had a fee accepted, and she'll be the first £1 million women's player. Yeah,
well, the first £1 million player in women's football are breaking the record for Chelsea signing of Naomi Girma in January. Olivia Smith is a player that joined Liverpool last season, only had 1 season in WSL after joining from Sporting in Portugal. Liverpool obviously weren't one of the more fancied sides in WSL last season. We're in the bottom half, so it's quite hard to judge Smith on that, but she was not prolific, scored 7 goals last season, and their leading creator as well. So she is a player that performed really well at Liverpool, despite their lower ranking in the table. Played 60-ish% of her minutes as a striker, but can also play on the right side of midfield. So that's really going to provide competition for both Beth Mead and Chloe Kelly on the right, but Alessia Russo in attack as well. One thing that is really interesting about Smith last season is actually another player like Mosca is great in 1v1 battles, just the other way around. She was really strong in her dribble and take-on stats last season. I think she had the 9th most take-ons in WSL last season, but of the top 10 for attempted take-ons, she had the best success rate. So really good at getting around opponents. Another player really strong with her ball carries as well. Only Alessia Russo with 21 had more shot-ending carries last season in WSL than Smith, who had 20, and she ranked 5th for the most progressive ball carries among forwards and wingers. So this is a player that Arsenal have aspirations of taking that WSL title away from Chelsea after a lot of dominance over the last few years. Obviously, they won the Women's Champions League last season. But the WSL is another one that they really want to get this season. And Smith will only help them get closer to that, I think, adding strength and depth there. So a really exciting player. They're still very young as well. So that £1 million, I guess, is based on potential as well. But it feels like money well spent for the Gunners.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Cool. Nice to speak to you.
So those were the stats and numbers behind the biggest transfer stories of the day on The Window. We'll see you next time.